Edward Grant was one of the richest men in England, a self-made billionaire whose sprawling country estate stood like a castle above the hills. He had power, he had influence, he had treasures collected from every corner of the world. But what he did not have was trust. He believed money poisoned every relationship, that no one could look him in the eye without secretly counting his wealth. This belief had hardened him into a man both feared and admired, a man who smiled rarely and trusted never. When Clara Whitfield entered his household as a young housekeeper, Edward felt the familiar sting of suspicion. She was quiet, diligent, and polite, perhaps too polite. He wondered, as he always did, whether her respect was for him or for his fortune. And so, in the stillness of night, he created his test. He left a leather briefcase full of cash on the polished mahogany table beside his bed, and then he closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. Clara entered to tend the fire, her footsteps soft upon the carpet, and when her eyes fell upon the case, she stopped. It would have been so easy. Her family was poor, her mother gravely ill, her little brother forced out of school for lack of fees. A fortune lay before her, enough to change their lives forever. Edward could almost hear her breathing quicken as temptation pressed upon her, but she never touched it. She bowed her head, whispered something like a prayer, and went about her duties. Edward repeated the game again and again. One night, he left a diamond large enough to buy a house. Another night, he left business documents that could ruin him if sold. Clara saw them all, hesitated each time, but never gave in. What Edward could not see was the battle inside her. Each night in her attic room, she cried quietly, knowing how easily she could save her family if only she betrayed her conscience. But she remembered her father's words, "A clear conscience is richer than a king's treasury." That memory kept her strong. Weeks passed, and the house seemed to change with her presence. Edward found himself watching her, not for betrayal anymore, but for something he had nearly forgotten: honesty. One evening, Clara discovered his private journal in the library. The pages were filled with Edward's hidden despair, his fear that money had stolen from him every chance of real companionship, his belief that no one cared for him beyond his fortune, his confession that he tested people not to protect his gold, but to prove to himself that goodness still existed. Clara closed the book with trembling hands, tears stinging her eyes. That night she came to him, her voice steady, though her heart pounded. "Sir," she said, "you do not need to test me anymore. I have seen your words. You are not afraid of theft. You are afraid of being alone. You have been searching not for loyalty to your wealth, but for honesty to your soul." Edward stared at her, and in her gaze he saw no greed, no calculation, only truth. For the first time in many years, he let the walls around his heart fall. "You are right," he whispered, "and you have proven to me what I thought was lost, that honesty still lives." From that day forward, Clara's role changed. No longer just a servant, she became his confidant, his advisor, his partner in running the estate and its charities. With her guidance, Edward began using his wealth not to trap people in suspicion, but to help those in need. Clara's mother was treated, her brother returned to school, and the villagers soon spoke of the young maid who had softened the cold heart of the richest man in England. Years later, when Edward's health declined, the leather case still sat in the library. It no longer held money. Inside was a single note in Edward's hand: "Integrity outlasts wealth to Clara, who proved to me that truth still breathes." And when Edward passed away, he left not just his fortune, but his faith in humanity to the woman who had once been a housekeeper, but had become the keeper of his soul.